2021 meeting of the Greensboro City Council. We will begin tonight's meeting with a moment of silence. Mrs. Johnson, would you lead us in the pledge?
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
The City Council has opened council meetings to the public with a limited capacity. Therefore, a limited number of residents will be allowed inside the council chambers and will be rotated for specific items of interest. Following the conclusion of items or topic of discussion, residents are asked to leave the chamber to allow room for others to enter the chamber. Public speakers must continue to register via form on the city's website. Deadline for submissions is 5 p.m. the day prior to the meeting. The public will be required to wear masks. Council procedure for the conduct of meeting. Council will use an electronic voting method. Each member of council must vote unless there is a direct conflict. We do allow for and welcome speakers to address council at the public forum meeting. Council respects the right for the public to speak about matters of concern that can be addressed by council. Each speaker will be allotted 3 minutes. Comments that are intended to incite unlawful behavior will be deemed out of order. Zoom participants are requested to mute their microphones until they are called upon to speak. The City of Greensboro is committed to promoting an environment that is free of discrimination, bias, and bullying. Thus, harassment, words, jokes, actions, or comments based on an individual's sex, sexual orientation, race, ethnic background, age, religion, physical condition, or other legally protected characteristic will not be tolerated. In order to be considered, written comments must be submitted online through the city's website, www.greensboro-nc.gov. Zoning matters do allow for a 15-minute presentation both for and against the rezoning. There is also a 5-minute rebuttal period for each side, pro and con. Please move to the window side of the room when your item is introduced. All Zoom participants must remain muted when others have been identified to speak. Once an item has been completed, the meeting host will remove speakers for said item. Guests are encouraged to watch the remainder of the meeting via the Greensboro Television Network or through the city's website. Written comments may be submitted on public hearing items up to 24 hours after the public hearing and will be provided to council for consideration. The platform for submission of comments must be submitted online through the city's website, www.greensboro-nc.gov. We do have a consent agenda for items E1 through E25, which are a grouping of agenda items that are voted on with one single vote to expedite what are believed to be routine and non-controversial items. Any council member may withdraw an item from the consent agenda due to a conflict of interest or for the purpose of voting no. Items removed from the consent agenda for discussion will be placed on the August City Council business agenda. This meeting does include closed captioning. Depending on the length of tonight's meeting, we will take a short recess around 7:30. I do want to make a comment regarding on the easy way to find these items on the city's website. I know that if people have it kind of marked as a favorite place to go to, it may be sending you to where the old agendas are. But if you go to the city's website, www.greensboro-nc.gov, right up in the top, there is a link that says City Council meetings, and it will bring you to the new eScribe agendas along with the archive of the old agendas. And for people who want to look at it, you've got the option of doing an HTML or a PDF. And for most people, looking at it at the HTML along with the links make it much easier to follow. We had a little bit of difficulty with our last meeting when it came to voting. We think we've got it worked out. We're going to ask people to be patient with us. And I think as people get to know the new website and the new links, that they will probably like it better than the old system that we had.
Mrs. Mayor, do I need to find somewhere on here to press to speak, or may I speak? I have a question. for
You have a question
I
on
have a
council
question for
procedure?
you. No,
Oh,
yeah,
okay.
on the procedure.
Okay.
In your reading, the monologue you were reading about how to sign up to speak before council, is that for everyone, or is that they have to sign up in advance? Is that for just on virtual, or is that for people who want to come and speak here? Because we used to allow people to just come and sign up here and speak.
Right, and what I've been told is that we would like to continue to have people sign up online. That way, the courier knows what we can expect in the council chambers. And if there is a large item, we will know how many people to expect and what the speakers are.
But
So
we'll know.
for the time being, to speak, yes, it would be to sign up at 5 o'clock the meeting before. Mr. City Manager?
We have
Well, I would
someone
like to
signing
say-
people up to speak
Sir.
tonight. We have someone signing people up to speak tonight. I don't know
Yeah,
what's
but
wrong with this
we're
thing.
disenfranchising people by simply saying, prior to you getting here, you got to sign up online. We got people who are blind. We got other people who come here and you know, you're talking about people, if Mr. Robert Moore was still living, who just comes and wants to speak, he doesn't know about signing up in advance. So we used to sign people up when they got here. And even so, we can still control the amount of the number of people, but I think we just disenfranchise the public. We are a public entity. And to say people now got to pre-sign up, I mean, I understand the virtual aspect, but to say we have to pre-sign up, I don't think we're being very inclusive in that regard. And I think that's a concern.
So, Mr. City Manager, you have heard those concerns? Yes.
We have someone sign up people tonight and we'll continue to.
Thank you.
Yeah, you're signing up if they come here, but if you're telling them they got to pre-sign up, you're not saying, well, come here and
I
we'll
think the
sign
city
you up.
manager just corrected that.
That's not what he corrected. He said he got somebody here signing them
We'll
up.
do both.
Correct. He did not correct that. So if I'm at home, if I don't have device, you know.
I think the city manager just said that people can sign up to speak as they enter the chamber.
I think
And
that,
then the script will be adjusted for the next meeting.
Yes.
Thank you.
thank you, Mr. City Manager. That's more inclusive. Thank you.
The applicant and residents have requested a 30-day continuance on item number F10, which is a public hearing for an ordinance annexing territory into the corporate limits for the property located at 2006 Wolf Trail Road, 9.985 acres. Anthony and Emma Jean Farrar. And item number 11, which is related, a public hearing for original zoning at 206 Wolf Trail Road without further advertising. These items will be postponed to the August 17th item of the city council agenda without further advertising. I believe we do need a vote on that, do we not, Mr. City Attorney?
Move to postpone. Second.
Yes.
Okay. A voice vote is fine. Mrs. Hoffman?
Yes.
Yes. Ms. Kennedy?
Yes.
Dr. Wells?
Yes.
Mrs. Johnson? I'm a yes. Mrs. Boothwiter?
Yes.
Mr. Outling?
Yes.
Mrs. Thurm?
Yes.
And Mrs. Hightower?
Yes, as I am the council representative for that district, we are working with the neighbors and the developer to hopefully come to a compromise. So we hope to have that resolved by the next meeting in August.
Thank you. And that passes 9-0. We will now move on to the consent agenda, which are items E1 through E25.
Move the agenda.
Second.
Moved by Dr. Wells and seconded by Mrs. Johnson. And I believe while we are doing virtual, we still have to take a verbal vote, or
No, this is not virtual. This is.
but we're
you're-
doing the hybrid. Do we still have to,
Okay. It was advertised that way, so yeah.
so we do need to take a verbal as well? Mrs. Hoffman,
Yes.
Ms. Kennedy,
Yes.
Dr. Wells,
Yes.
Mrs. Johnson?
Yes.
I am a yes. Mrs.
Yes.
Abuzawader, Mr. Outling?
Yes.
Mrs. Thurm,
Yes.
and Mrs. Hightower.
Yes.
And that passes 9-0. We will now move on to the public hearing portion of our agenda. We did receive one written comment from Heather Smith regarding the Pleasant Ridge Alcorn zoning item for the July 20th, 2020 meeting. This will be posted to the city's website tomorrow. We do have 7 speakers signed up to participate in tonight's meeting. Item F1 and F2 will be taken together. We do have, let's see, 3 speakers in favor, none signed up against. Item F1 is a public hearing for an ordinance annexing territory into the corporate limits for property located at 2701 Alcorn Road and 1817 Pleasant Ridge Road, 46.25 acres, Lyndon Mitchell, John Pearson, Iris Pearson. And item number F2, a public hearing for original zoning 1819 Pleasant Ridge Road and 7201 Alcorn Road. Mr. Kirkman, would you like to give us a brief overview?
Yes, thank you, Mayor Vaughn. Having some technical difficulty sharing your screen, so if you'll bear with me here just 1 minute.
Yes.
Rodney, can you enable the sharing, please? Sorry for that. The request this evening is for an annexation and original zoning for approximately 46.25 acres located on the west side of Pleasant Ridge Road and south of Alcorn Road. The current zoning is County RS 40 residential single family, and the request is to go to City CD RM18 conditional district residential multifamily. North of the request is currently zoned County RS 40 residential single family, as well as County RS 40 MH residential single family manufactured housing. East of the request is zoned City R3 residential single family. South of the request is currently zoned residential single family County RS 40 and City R3 also residential single family. West of the request is zoned County RS 40 single family residential. The subject property currently contains a single family dwelling and undeveloped land. North, east, south, and west of the request are single family dwellings. The property is currently designated as residential on the future land use map of GSO 2040 comprehensive plan and is designated as urban general on the the future built form map of the comprehensive plan. I do have some brief video here just to give you a better sense of the site given its size. So this is looking at the site on Pleasant Ridge Road. The subject property is on your left. The 2 houses in the picture here are actually not part of that request. We're moving north on Pleasant Ridge Road at this point. And coming up on the intersection of Pleasant Ridge Road and Alcorn Road. So this is Alcorn Road here on the north side of the property. These are some homes that are located along Alcorn Road that are north of the subject site. And in the image towards the top, you can see a nearby school in the picture that's further up Pleasant Ridge Road. At this point, we are going along Cedar Line Drive, which also has single family residential to the west of the subject site. At this point, you'll be able to see the area of the site that has a stream running along the western boundary. It's a prominent feature of the site. And Alcorn Road is located to your north in this image. This is kind of a drainage area that's located along Alcorn Road. This drainage area then flows into the stream that runs along the western property boundary of the site. Again, these are houses along Cedar Line Road, which are west of the subject property. The subject property would be located to your right in this image. This is a view of a school and a residential subdivision that's located further north of the site along Pleasant Ridge Road. From this angle, the subject site would be located to your right in the top of the screen. This is a view of some of the houses along Prentice Road that is located on the southern boundary of the subject site in the southeast corner. Pleasant Ridge Road would be located to your right in this image. The applicant has submitted a condition with this request that limits uses to a maximum of 290 dwelling units. As noted previously, this is designated as urban general on the future built form map and the residential on the future land use map of the comprehensive plan. Staff did conclude that this original zoning request does support the comprehensive plan's creating great places goal to expand Greensboro's citywide network of unique neighborhoods, offering residents of all walks of life a variety of quality housing choices, and the building community connections goal to maintain stable, attractive, and healthy places to live and raise families. The proposed CD RM18 zoning district allows for expanded residential uses that can complement other existing residential uses in this area, and staff is recommending approval of the request. The annexation and the original zoning were both heard by the Planning and Zoning Commission at their June 21st meeting, and the commission unanimously voted to recommend approval of both the annexation and the original zoning. At that meeting, there were 2 speakers in favor of the request and 2 speakers in opposition to the request. And I can answer any questions at this time.
Can you, I'm sorry, can we go back to that
Oops,
last
sorry.
screen? Can you elaborate on the allows expanded residential uses phrase?
Yes, so the current zoning is focused only on single-family residential. So by allowing the multifamily residential, you're going to allow a range of residential uses. And I believe the attorney will speak to some of that as well. So it will be proposed as a combination of single-family and multifamily with that. And that's what we mean by the expanded uses. You're most welcome.
Thank you. We do have 3 speakers in favor. Mr. Terrell, would you like to start us off? Currently, there is nobody against.
Thank you, Mike. Thank you, Madam Mayor. Tom Terrell, Fox Rothschild, 230 North Elm Street, representing Leo Terra Development. Here with Leo Terra is Mr. Kyle Bunker, and trying to get on to the feed tonight, but sometimes getting bumped off is Eddie McEldowney with Davis Martin Powell. And if you have an engineering question, if he's not on, I will actually try to answer that. Our presentation is very short. This is not something that is coming to the council outside of our policies. From a policy overview, this is growth tier 1. This is what the city has been planning for. It is consistent with our future land use map. We're all getting accustomed to now the new comprehensive plan lingo. This is urban general in that on the future built format. And if you look at the aerial, it is very, very close to airport property. And I think that factoid in itself identifies this as something that's in a growth area. As a quick overview of what the site is, I think it's important to note that when you see CDRM 18, that there is a density cap, which makes this essentially 6.27 unit per acre zoning. It cannot go above that. And I think if I heard your question, Ms. Durham, as to what would it be, it could be anything residential that comes in under that. The decision has not been made. The market is shifting. There's a tremendous demand for townhomes among citizens. That's shifting a little bit. It could be a combination of single family. That decision will be made post rezoning. It does have very good connectivity with connectivity at 3 points and a potential fourth to a stub. And then, as I say here, likely townhomes, but there's a big shift now and we just don't know. We're always glad to be here when staff and the zoning commission have put wind in your sails with very positive recommendations. I do want to show a couple of things here that tell a great story. First, this is not an undeveloped area. If you look at the aerial in front of you, most of this is county growth where it's well septic that has been developing since the 40s, 50s, 60s, a lot of ranch homes, but there's nothing around this tract that's undeveloped. This is an island waiting for something to occur. Now, at the zoning commission, the big issue seemed to have been stormwater. And I wanted to focus on this a little bit because stormwater is not a land use issue. I think if you ask any professional, stormwater is not. Stormwater is an engineering issue. It is a matter that you meet it or you don't. It's based in mathematics, it's based in physics, it's based on calculations of stormwater that cross the land during certain size rains. And then you have engineers here in the city who look at those calculations and they look at the stormwater devices and they tell you, do you meet that or not? So it's a very objective check the box determination. It's not a question of will there be more or less stormwater, because we have what is called a pre-post requirement. And what is pre-post? And this became an issue at zoning commission. I don't think it's going to be raised here today, but when you require stormwater devices, those stormwater devices have to be sized so that the rain that falls on that site post-development equals the rain that flows off that site pre-development. Now, are those devices required to meet a 100-year storm? No, they're not. But they are required to meet state law. And our state law is consistent with everything required by federal law. I heard that came up, in fact, last night at the zoning commission, that these things are a lot more common. But when people come in to a hearing like this, there are only so many points they can make, and stormwater is often one that you will hear. I would like, though, to make it very clear, if more than as much as I can, stormwater is not a land use issue. The final point is that this is a very good running dialogue that we had with neighbors out there. I joked or commented more than once, there must be something in the water they've been drinking, because we hear so much anger very often when we bring change into a community representing growth. Everybody out there was the nicest in their response to us that I have encountered in a long time. And we greatly appreciated that. They had a lot of questions. We hope that we answered all of them in a straightforward, forthright manner. But it was very successful meetings and a series of conversations up to that. I'm glad to answer any questions you have. Of course, we hope that you will vote favorably to annex and rezone this tract.
Mr. Terrell, do you have anybody else who wishes to
I
speak
think,
on your behalf?
No, Mr. Bunker and Mr. McEldowney are here as just in case.
Okay. Any questions for Mr. Terrell or? So we have nobody in opposition, so I don't think you want to rebut yourself. So I think we can probably close the public hearing. If I have a motion.
Public hearing.
Moved by Mr. Buzawader, seconded by Dr. Wells. Mrs. Hoffman?
Yes.
Ms. Kennedy? Dr. Wells?
Yes.
Mrs. Johnson?
Yes.
Yes, I'm a yes. Mrs. Buzawader?
Yes.
Mr. Outling?
Yes.
Mrs. Thurm?
Yes.
And Mrs. Hightower?
Yes.
And-
Move the item.
Second.
So that is for the annexation, moved by Mrs. Johnson, seconded by Mrs. Thurm, but we're going to try to use our new voting system. Okay, so, and now Mrs. Thurm, that works. And now if you would vote, hit submit.
Submit.
And for the record, we still need a verbal vote. Mrs. Hoffman,
Yes.
Ms. Kennedy,
Yes.
Dr. Wells.
Yes.
Mrs. Johnson.
Yes.
I'm a yes. Mrs. Abuzawader.
Yes.
Mr. Outling.
Yes.
Mrs. Thurm.
Yes.
And Mrs. Hightower.
Yes.
And that passes 9-0. Thank you. Let's see. Now we need a motion for item number F2, which does require the motion of statement of consistency.
Move the item. Second.
Moved by Mrs. Thurm,
Second.
seconded by Mrs. Hoffman. Oh, Ms. Kennedy, sorry. If you can, Michelle, do you have that up? We do, okay. And so now,
The Greensboro City Council believes that its action to recommend approval of the original zoning request for the property described as 1819 Pleasant Ridge Road and 7201 Alcorn Road from County RS 40 to City CD RM 18 to be consistent with the adopted GSO 2040 Comprehensive Plan and considers the action taken to be reasonable and in the public interest for the following reasons. The request is consistent with the comprehensive plan's future belt form map and future land use map. The proposed CDRM 18 zoning district as conditioned permits uses which fit the context of surrounding area and limits negative impacts on the surrounding area. The request is reasonable due to the size, physical conditions, and other attributes of the area. It will benefit the property owner and surrounding community, and approval is in the public interest.
thank you. Council, please vote. And for the record, Mrs. Hoffman,
Yes.
Ms. Kennedy,
Yes.
Dr. Wells,
Yes.
Mrs. Johnson.
Yes.
I'm a yes. Mrs. Abuzawader.
Yes.
Mr. Outling.
Yes.
Mrs. Thurm.
Yes.
And Mrs. Hightower.
Yes.
And that passes 9-0. Thank you. We will now move on to items F3 and F4. Public hearing for F3 is a public hearing for an ordinance annexing territory into the corporate limits for property located at 3437 Randleman Road, 1.77 acres, Jean Dulin. And item F4, a public hearing for original zoning, 3437 Randleman Road. We do have one speaker in favor. Mr. Kirkman, if you'd like to give us a brief overview.
Yes, thank you, Mayor Vaughn. Again, the property is 1.77 acres located on the east side of Randleman Road and north of Wolf Trail Road. The existing zoning is County RS 30 residential single family, and the request is to zone it to City R3 residential single family. North and south of the request are currently zoned RS 30 residential. East of the request is zoned a combination of RS 30 residential and AG agricultural. West of the request is zoned County RS 40 residential and City R3 residential single family. The property currently contains a single family dwelling. North, east, south, and west request are also single family dwellings. This property is currently designated as commercial on the future land use map of the comprehensive plan and urban general on the future built form map. The proposed original zoning does support the comprehensive plan's Creating Great Places goal to expand Greensboro's citywide network of unique neighborhoods, offering residents of all walks of life a variety of quality housing choices, and the building community connections goal to maintain stable, attractive, and healthy places to live and raise families. The proposed R3 zoning district does permit similar uses to the surrounding area, and staff is recommending approval of the requests. Both the annexation and the original zoning request were heard by the zoning commission at their June 21st meeting, and the commission unanimously recommended approval of both items. There were three speakers in favor of the request and none in opposition. I can answer any questions.
Thank you. We do have one speaker on Zoom. Ms. Jean Dulin.
Yes, my property is 3437 Randleman Road. And I was just trying to hook up to city water. That's my only request.
Okay, are there any questions for Ms. Dulin? Thank you. If there are no further comments, can I have a motion to close the public hearing?
Move to close the public hearing.
Moved by Mrs. Johnson, seconded by Dr. Wells. Mrs. Hoffman?
Yes.
Ms. Kennedy?
Yes.
Dr. Wells?
Yes.
Mrs. Johnson?
Yes.
I'm a yes. Mrs. Abuzawader?
Yes.
Mr. Outling?
Yes.
Mrs. Thurm?
Yes.
Mrs. Hightower?
Yes.
And that passes 9-0. If we could have a motion for F3,
Move
Is it-
F3.
Second.
moved by Mrs. Johnson, seconded by Mrs. Hightower. And let's see if we can get the voting to work. In the meantime, we'll,
Sorry, Madam Mayor, if Madam Pro Tem Johnson could hit the button to submit to move it.
I did move. Move this item?
You had to move it because I seconded it.
Right here.
okay, while she's resetting the computer, Mrs. Hoffman,
Yes.
Ms. Kennedy,
Yes.
Dr. Wells? Yes. Mrs. Johnson? I'm a yes. Mrs. Abuzawader?
Yes.
Mr. Outling?
Yes.
Mrs. Thurm?
Yes.
And Mrs. Hightower?
Yes.
That passes 9-0. Item number F4 does require a statement of consistency. Do I have a motion?
Second.
Moved by Mrs. Abuzawader and seconded by Mrs. Hightower. Mrs. Abuzawader, would you read that, please?
Yes, thank you. The Greensboro City Council believes that its action to recommend approval of the original zoning request for the property described 3437 Randleman Road and a portion of Randleman Road from County RS 30 residential single family to City R3 residential single family. To be consistent with the adopted GSO 2040 comprehensive plan and considers the action taken to be reasonable and in the public interest for the following reasons. The request is consistent with the comprehensive plan's future built form map and future land use map. The proposed R3 zoning district permits uses which fit the context of surrounding area. The request is reasonable due to the size, physical conditions, and other attributes of the area. It will benefit the property owner and surrounding community, and approval is in the public interest.
Thank you. And for the record, council, please vote. In the meantime, Mrs. Hoffman,
Yes.
Ms. Kennedy,
Yes.
Dr. Wells,
Yes.
Mrs. Johnson, I'm a yes. Mrs. Abuzawader?
Yes.
Mr. Outling,
Yes.
Mrs. Thurm,
Yes.
Mrs. Hightower?
Yes.
And that passes 9-0. Item number F5 and F6, a public hearing for an ordinance annexing territory into the corporate limits for property located at 4103 Rockingham Road South, 0.613 acres. Mark and Dana Southard. And item Number F6, a public hearing for original zoning, 4103 South Rockingham Road. I don't believe we have any speakers on this item, so if you want to do a very brief presentation.
I will be happy to. The subject request is currently zoned county RS 20, which is single family. It's requested to go to city R3 residential single family. They are asking for annexation to access city water. Surrounding zoning is similar in terms of single family zoning allowances. This is property to be built with a single family dwelling and can only be done as one single family dwelling based on the acreage. It does
And-
meet, again, the comprehensive plans creating great places goal to expand Greensboro's citywide network of unique neighborhoods, offering residents of all walks of life a variety of quality housing choices, in the building community connections goal to maintain stable and attractive and healthy places to live and raise families. The proposed R3 district permits uses compatible with the other residential uses in the surrounding area, and staff's recommending approval of the request. Zoning Commission reviewed both the annexation and original zoning at their June 21st meeting and unanimously recommended both items. There were 2 people speaking in favor and none in opposition.
Thank you. And Mr. Southward has signed on if there are any questions. Otherwise, do I have a motion for F5?
Move the item.
Moved by Ms. Kennedy, second by Mrs. Hoffman.
That was actually me, but that's okay. We interchangeable.
No, I thought I heard it that way. Sorry.
No, it was me.
And we're waiting for that to come up. Mrs. Hoffman,
Yes.
Ms. Kennedy,
Yes.
Dr. Wells?
Yes.
Mrs. Johnson? I'm a yes. Mrs. Abusawader?
Yes.
Mr. Outling?
Yes.
Mrs. Thurm?
Yes.
And Mrs. Hightower?
Yes,
And that passes 9-0. Do we have,
Move item 6.
moved by Mrs. Johnson?
Second.
Seconded by Ms. Kennedy?
Greensboro City Council believes that its actions to recommend approval. The Greensboro City Council believes that its action to recommend approval of the original zoning request for the property described as 4103 South Rockingham Road from County RS 20 residential single family to City R3 residential single family to be consistent with the adopted GSO 2040 comprehensive plan, and considers the action taken to be reasonable and in the public interest for the following reasons. The request is consistent with the comprehensive plan's future build form map and future land use map. 2, the proposed R3 zoning district permits uses which fit the context of surrounding area. And 3, the request is reasonable due to the size, physical conditions, and other attributes of the area, and it will benefit the property owner and surrounding community, and approval is in the public's best interest.
Thank you. So that has been moved and seconded. Mrs. Hoffman?
Yes.
Ms. Kennedy?
Yes.
Dr. Wells?
Yes.
Mrs. Johnson?
Yes.
I am a yes. Mrs. Abusawader?
Yes.
Mr. Outling?
Yes.
Mrs. Thurm?
Yes.
And Mrs. Hightower?
yes.
And that passes 9-0. We will now move on to items number F7, F8, and F9. Item number F7 is a public hearing for an ordinance annexing territory into the corporate limits for property located at 1912 and 1912 ZZ Prosper Road, 15.67 acres. Cheryl Glover, Brian Wentworth, and Loretta Wentworth. Item number F8, public hearing for original zoning, 1912 Prosper Road, I'm sorry. And item F9, public hearing for original zoning, 1912 ZZ Prosper Road. We do have 1 speaker in favor and 2 opposed. Mr. Kirkman?
Yes, thank you, Mayor Vaughn. The council is being asked to consider 3 items in this case where we have an annexation and 2 original zoning requests. The total amount of acreage is 15.697. The private property that is petitioned to come into the city is this larger hatched area, the 12.027 acres, currently zoned County AG agricultural and residential single family RS 40, and they are requesting to change that zoning to city CD RM5 residential multifamily. There is a separate piece of property that is a publicly owned piece of property that if the first piece comes into the city under state law, the other piece will also come in at that time. That property is currently zoned county PI WCA, which is public and institutional in the watershed critical area. And the request is to change that zoning to city PNR, parkland and natural resource areas. North of these requests is currently zoned city PNR. East of the request is zoned county AG agricultural and county RS 40 residential single family. South of the request is zoned county RS 40 and county CU RS 12 conditional use residential single family. West of the request is zoned county RS 40 residential single family, county AG agricultural, and city CDR 5 conditional district residential single family 5. The subject properties are currently a combination of a single family dwelling and undeveloped land. North of the request are property used as watershed protection areas, and which is of course undeveloped. East of the request is undeveloped. South and west are single family dwellings and undeveloped land. The properties, the main portion of the property is designated as residential on the future land use map of the comprehensive plan, with the publicly owned area designated as reserve under the future land use map. On the feature belt form map, the designations are urban general and reserve. This is the condition that was submitted by the applicant and advertised as part of this request. Staff did conclude that these original zoning requests support the comprehensive plans, creating great places goal to expand Greensboro's citywide network of unique neighborhoods, offering residents of all walks of life a variety of quality housing choices, as well as the sustainability goal to promote environmental stewardship by taking care of our natural resources and the natural systems that support all living things. The proposed CDRM5 and PNR zoning districts allow uses complementary to other existing uses in the surrounding area, and staff is recommending both zoning requests. These requests were heard by the zoning commission at their June 21st meeting and were unanimously approved. All three items for recommended approval. There were 2 speakers in favor and there were none speaking against at the meeting. Staff did become aware that there was an additional person who was opposed but was unable to join the meeting. I believe that person is signed up to speak this evening. I can answer any questions.
And I've just been informed that neither Dawn or James Sauls are on the Zoom call, but we do have David Stone who is speaking in favor. Mr. Stone?
Yes, I'm here, Madam Mayor, and good evening. Thank you for your time. My name is David Stone. I'm president of D Stone Builders. We currently have this property under contract.
Mr. Stone, do you have, there it is. We didn't see you. Go right ahead. I'm sorry.
Oh, sorry. As Mr. Kirkman alluded to, we are requesting an RM5 zoning with the limitation of 35 units, which would be less than 3 per acre. The plan is to develop the property into a maintenance-free townhome community, similar to a number of others we've done across the city. The target buyer for these communities is your 55 and older empty nesters looking to downsize and do, less yard work around the house. Price point we're targeting right now is going to be starting in the high 300s. And we have had communications with the neighbors. We received city's mailing list, sent a letter out to each individual or address on that list on June 9th, held a Zoom call on June 21st, presented our preliminary sketch plan, and answered any questions that we could with the neighbors that attended. There were about a dozen or so in attendance. And I'll be happy to answer any questions that anyone on council has. Thank you.
Thank you. Are there any questions for Mr. Stone? In that case, can we close, since Madam Clerk, I just want to confirm there's no one in opposition?
No, ma'am.
Okay, can we
Move to
have a
close.
motion? Moved by Ms. Kennedy, seconded by Ms. Abusawader. Mrs. Hoffman?
Yes.
Ms. Kennedy?
Yes.
Dr. Wells?
Yes.
Mrs. Johnson?
Yes.
I'm a yes. Mrs. Abusawader?
Yes.
Mr. Outling?
Yes.
Mrs. Thurm?
Yes.
And Mrs. Hightower?
Yes.
And that passes 9-0. So we need a motion for the annexation on number 7, F7.
Moved F7.
Second.
Moved by Mrs. Johnson, seconded by Ms. Kennedy. Let's see if,
Names aren't coming up right, but it's all right.
while that is processing, Mrs. Hoffman,
Yes.
Ms. Kennedy,
Yes.
Dr. Wells?
Yes.
Mrs. Johnson?
Yes.
I am a yes. Mrs. Abusawader?
Yes.
Mr. Outling?
Yes.
Mrs. Thurm?
Yes.
And Mrs. Hightower?
Yes.
And then we need a motion for F8, which will require a statement of consistency.
Before you do that, would you go back to the vote? So I just flicked back to it and got ready to vote and it clicked off. But that's fine. That's fine. Okay, cool. Go right ahead, Madam Mayor. I'm sorry.
That's all right. Motion for F8 consistency,
Move the item.
moved by Mrs. Abusawader,
Second.
seconded by Ms. Kennedy. Mr. Abusawader, if you'd read that.
Thank you. The Greensboro City Council believed that its action to recommend approval of the original zoning request for the property described as 1912 Trosper Road from County AG Agricultural and County RS 40 Residential Single Family to City CD RM5, Conditional District Residential Multifamily 5, to be consistent with the adopted GSO 2040 Comprehensive Plan, and considers the action to be taken to be reasonable and in the public interest for the following reasons. The request is consistent with the Comprehensive Plan's future built form map and future land use map. The proposed CDRM5 zoning district as conditioned permits uses which fit the context of surrounding area and limits negative impacts on the surrounding area. The request is reasonable due to the size, physical conditions, and other attributes of the area. It will benefit the property owner and surrounding community, and approval is in the public interest.
Okay, that's been moved and seconded. Council, please vote if that comes up. In the meantime, Mrs. Hoffman,
Yes.
Ms. Kennedy,
Yes.
Dr. Wells?
Yes.
Mrs. Johnson?
Yes.
I'm a yes. Mrs. Abusawader?
Yes.
Mr. Outling?
Yes.
Mrs. Thurm?
Yes.
Mrs. Hightower?
The thing never came up for the,
Okay, so that is the vote. It passes 9-0 on F8. F9 also requires a statement of consistency. Do we have a motion for F9?
So moved.
Moved by Mrs. Abusawader,
Second.
seconded by Mrs. Johnson. Mrs. Abusawader, would you read that, please?
The Greensboro City Council believes that its action to recommend approval of the original zoning request for the property described 1912-CZ Prosper Road from County PIWCA Public and Institutional in the Watershed Critical Area Overlay District to City PNR, Parkland and Natural Resource Areas to be consistent with the adopted GSO 2040 Comprehensive Plan, and considers the action taken to be reasonable and in the public interest for the following reasons. The request is consistent with the comprehensive plan's future built form map and future land use map. The proposed PNR zoning district permits uses which fit the context of surrounding area. The request is reasonable due to the size, physical conditions, and other attributes of the area. It will benefit the property owner and surrounding community, and approval is in the public interest.
Okay, and that has been moved and seconded. Mrs. Hoffman?
Yes.
Ms. Kennedy?
Yes.
Dr. Wells?
Yes.
Mrs. Johnson?
yes,
I am a yes. Mrs. Abusawader?
Yes.
Mr. Outling?
Yes.
Mrs. Thurm?
Yes.
And Mrs. Hightower? Yes. And that passes 9-0. We continued items number F10 and F11. We will move on to the general business portion of our agenda. G1 is a resolution approving contract 2020-045 in the amount of $624,859.90 with Atlantic Contracting Company. I believe this was continued from our last meeting. Are there any questions? Or is
Move
there a
the
motion?
item.
Yes, I have questions.
Mrs. Hightower?
Yes, I do have questions. I can't get off this screen. As I believe you all saw today, we got an email today from something that I asked 30 days ago and never got a response until today, which left a short amount of time to try to understand the email and the logistics of this contract. My concern with this contract is the question that I asked 30 days ago was why there is combined goals. And the answer that I received today,
You said combine what?
combined, they combined the goals together. They combined all the goals for the MWBE into one. Okay? And my question was, why? So I got an answer today, and I think every one of you got an email today. The purpose of this program is to ensure that MWBEs get work and are included. And they split the work, the goals. They do an M goal and they do a WBE goal, okay? They don't do combined goals. And what I read today didn't make sense to me. So I reached out to Griffin and Strong and asked Griffin and Strong, because the email said it's in our plan, and they've not seen it in the plan. I've not seen it in the plan. And if the plan has changed, certainly we need to vote for a revised plan. And the plan that we have speaks of, and as I talked to Griffin and Strong today, they said the whole point of this program is to make sure that when you set goals and availability of work for Black business, minority, you set goals and availability of work for white women business. And so according to the email that I also received on April 9th, there was a goal-setting committee meeting. And in that goal-setting committee meeting, according to the minutes of the goal-setting committee meeting, MBE goals were 24%. That meant that there was 24% capacity to do the work, and then 13% WBE. If we're gonna start combining goals, then we have absolutely changed the spirit and the law of the program. And I don't think we need to approve this contract until we get this straight. Yes, it has been continued once. I understand that. Nobody wants to continue it again. I certainly would like to continue it again. But combining goals is not what this program is about. It is splitting it in so that there is fairness and equity. Now, I understand that it said it was concrete flat work. So I spoke to a concrete businessman today, a Black one, who said he never gets work with this company, but he's made 3 bids, 3 different bids on the work that they currently have here at the city, because there's only 2 Black business concrete guys in this city, okay? But in the 27 MSA area, there's more. And he says, if it wasn't for Yates Construction, which I applaud Yates, he wouldn't even get concrete work in this city. And he's had to go outside the city to get work. And that's very unfortunate. I understand it's a bidding process and that you have to bid and you know, your prices should be right. But also when you bid, and I asked Griffin and Strong this, I said, well, what if it's concrete flat work? And she said to me, well, if they don't bid, you don't know what they have the capacity to do. So if you automatically eliminate a Black company from this by combining a goal, you've disenfranchised that business. I don't think this is what we said we wanted to do. It is certainly not what I feel that we want to do. And I think this is passive discrimination by combining bids together, combining the goal together, then if every time we determine that we don't think somebody will meet that qualification, we will never get opportunity. And I said that to the Black businessman today. I said, well, what do you think about this? And he said, I'll never get any work like this. And I don't think this is what we need to be doing, going down the path. So I only had a short amount of time to do some research, information, because I just got this response today. But I would really like to delve a little bit deeper into this, because I think there's something here that I think we can't allow to happen. And with the company that is currently has the bid, they have created a second company out of their company who got all 37% of the work, the WBE. I am all for MWBE. Women, real women businesses, I'm all about supporting real women businesses. And the prime on this is a WBE. So I'm all about supporting that. But I'm also about supporting what we said this program was about. When Griffin and Strong did the disparity study, and they said in their study, they talked about the benefit of making sure the goals are split, MBE and WBE.
I move to
support
table this
That
and get
we-
some clarity.
Yes,
We
ma'am.
tabled this last month.
We
You know what,
we
but
did,
they-
and I think
they
that
take-
Kim,
But I second your
Table
take.
it again.
and I think that that Assistant City Manager Sowell would like to speak to it. And I know that Ms. Abuzawader had some
Okay.
questions as well.
Sure.
And I believe that Ms. Katan is on the phone if we need her.
She is. And so I would love to explain why the goal setting committee recommended a combined goal. It certainly is not the standard practice of setting combined goals. And so as we move forward in future council meetings, if you will look, you customarily see that there's always an M goal and a W goal. With this project, there were only 3 main scopes of work for the concrete, the curb and gutter repair project. There was a scope of work for temporary traffic control that was for $5,000. There was a scope of work for concrete curb and ramp, which was $36,000. And so that's, you're not going to be able to carve out a M or a W out of $40,000 worth of 2 scopes of work. The major portion of this project was definitely removing and replacing concrete. And that accounted for, of the $561,000 that was estimated, that accounted for $520,000 of the work. And that was even broken down further. There was some portions that was 4-inch sidewalk, 6-inch sidewalk, 8-inch sidewalk or driveway. Those amounts were like $13,000, $45,000, $20,000. So even breaking it up within the concrete work that had to be done, they were very small amounts that are hard for you to assign an M or a W to make any type of money. So the greatest portion of all of it, there was 4,700 square yards of 4-inch sidewalk. That was $280,000. So staff felt like it was more prudent than for us to try to break off 0.5% here, 1% there to try to figure out how much we could give to an M or W. It's more prudent to combine that goal and allow, and we don't know which company is going to get the contract at the time we're setting goals. It's just, they know that the industry of work, they don't assign 4 inches of sidewalk to this company and then 6 inches of sidewalk to another company. They will select a company and that company will do, whether it's 4 inches or 6 inches, they will do all of the work. So staff felt like it was more prudent for us to combine this goal because it was difficult to say how much we could assign to an M because of these small amounts and how much we could assign to a W because of the small amounts. And this is a project that the contractor that was awarded, they normally self-perform as well. And so that is why staff elected and the entire goal setting committee agreed to it. that it be a combined goal. It is certainly not a practice that we do for every project. So I completely agree with you, Councilwoman Hightower. And it is a part of our plan. I'll send out a copy of the plan and indicate to you all where that is a part of the plan that says that we can combine goals. But it is definitely our goal to always assign an MBE or WBE goal. But in this project right here, it was hard to break out what could be MBE and what could be WBE because the small amounts made up the larger total. So that's why staff felt it was more prudent.
Unacceptable.
Thank you. I understand much better now. what you're-
Well, I may understand, and I think Mary Kay's next, but I don't accept that excuse. This is MBE and WBE. And if it's only WBE, then give them 14%. But just to simply combine that, and I'm reading what someone sent me who was actually part of that. And when the goal coordinating committee reviewed it as well, and saying by combining the goal and adding to WBE, there is a possibility that the 24% availability for the MWB will be for the contract will be overlooked. I mean, we can't overlook that. And even though you mentioned small amounts of work, we have broken out small amounts of concrete. Somebody paved a sidewalk over in a neighborhood and they only went from one corner of a block to another. It wasn't a lot, but it was work, and an MBE got a chance to do that. This is disenfranchising those people that are in this process. And I think that we're overturning a lot of stuff that is not recommended. And when we have an expert that we paid money to, and they don't even agree with this, we're not listening to the people who have the legal knowledge and do disparity studies across this state, Atlanta, and other states, Georgia as well. So, I mean, we have experts here. And if that was something, you should have given it to the city attorney. He is contracted with Griffin and Strong for them to review that. I spoke to their person today. They've never seen this in the plan. And so to me, we are making decisions that I think step outside of the plan. And if you sent something that's in a plan and it's not in a plan I found today, and it needs to be approved. And I would never approve anything like that myself personally. I don't know about rest of council.
So, Ms. Sabuzwaiter and then Mr. Outling.
Thank you, Madam Mayor, and thank you, Assistant City Manager Sowell, for explaining that so well. I do want to say that, I think sometimes we need to listen to those who have the expertise. And the fact that the goal setting committee approved this and was in support of this, that means a lot to me. I do want to say that sometimes when we delve so deep, and maybe some information should have been given out very early on, but we have a company here who has been here for years. We have a woman-led company who she actually does the work for this company. It's not where it's just someone in name. There have been articles about Ms. Catan that, she has been out in the community. She does a lot of the engineering work. She does all of the contracting work just about. So I don't want us to lose sight of the fact that because this was done in this manner and it was approved unanimously by the goal setting committee, I want us to make sure that we are not driving away good small businesses that are here. I am really worried about that. And I'll tell you why. A company such as this could be wooed away by another city in a heartbeat. They have more than 50 employees. All the work is done here. And the city of Greensboro would lose out because this company, to my recollection, has never had a complaint about it. They do good work. And they do good work and employ people in the city of Greensboro. So I personally appreciate that this is done this way. And I also want to say that, yes, there are minority subcontractors out there, but I'm going to tell you something personal. We're trying to get 2 buildings done with some contracting work on the outside, glass work. We made a vow, my husband and I, we were only going to use minority contractors. Well, we've been on the phone for 3 months. The minority contractors that we got hold of them, some of you well know, they are booked out a year. Now, is every contractor? No. Is every concrete contractor? Not that I'm aware of. But I just want to keep that in mind because I am so thankful that they are busy. But I do believe it's going to create an issue when staff has done something like this and the goal setting committee, in order to try to explain why the goals were combined. I really think we should listen because I don't want to lose another company out of the city of Greensboro. So I am fully in support of this. And I truly believe that we need to, Sharon, I believe we need to be careful. I'll say that right along with you. But I also believe when everyone has approved this, that we should listen to that, especially the goal setting committee. So thank you, staff, and thank you to the goal setting committee. I think we should move forward with this. We, especially as you all know, as chair of the MPO, we're trying to move forward all these projects and get these sidewalks done and get these curbs and gutters done and everything that needs to be done in the city of Greensboro. We've already delayed a month on this. I prefer we not delay another. Thank you.
Mr. Outling, then Dr. Wells.
Yeah, I agree. Thanks, Ms. Sowell, for that clear explanation, both orally as well as through your email. As I understand it, you explained that the goals were combined because there are limited subcontracting opportunities. Councilwoman Hightower stated that it was her understanding that's not a part of the plan, but your understanding is that it is. So I think at least the city staff's response to that point is clear. You also explained kind of the reasoning of the goal setting committee in determining that there are limited subcontracting opportunities. Is there a discussion in the plan that actually defines or explains what constitutes a limited subcontracting opportunity? Or does staff kind of feel its way through and make a determination without having a standard that's in the plan?
Right, that is not spelled out in the plan. So a lot of the discussion that happens at goal setting committee is based on experiences that staff has had in the field and on previous projects. That's where that comes from.
And it sounds like from both, at least my interpretation of Councilwoman Hightower's statements as well as yours, that the definition and what does constitute a limited subcontracting opportunity is really important, because it sounds like my inference is that it could be used to kind of evade the purpose of the plan. Is that right?
That is true. So what I will tell you is there are some projects where we have 15 different line items of different scopes of work. So that, that lends itself to a lot of subcontracting opportunities. When you have 3 scopes of work and 2 of those scopes are 5,000 and 20, that to the staff, that constitutes limited subcontracting opportunities.
Okay, it is. So it's not, it's very important. It's not in the plan. Is there kind of an articulated or explained criteria that staff or the goal setting committee uses to determine whether there are limited subcontracting opportunities?
So subcontracting opportunities, yes. Limited, no. So there is no definition for limited subcontracting opportunities. That's based on the experience.
Okay, and that's helpful. I mean, your explanation to me sounds very reasonable and makes a lot of sense. It seems like the conclusion that staff made and the goal setting committee made was really reasonable. Where I am very empathetic and where I have pause is that this is a very important issue. There's not a definition for what constitutes limited subcontracting opportunities in the MWBE plan. There's not a clear benchmark that staff uses and can articulate to us now in terms of what constitutes limited subcontracting opportunities. And the information to that and very important question that was posed, Ms. Hightower stated a while ago, just was received today. And it sounds like she asked a lot of great questions of Griffin and Strong, but quite frankly, on a very important issue that could subvert the purpose of a plan, I think having a few hours to do that at the day of a meeting, not having an opportunity to discuss it with colleagues in advance, I understand why there would be a need for additional time to discuss that and consider that. Is there a sense of time sensitivity around approving this item tonight? Because I'm also empathetic and understand Councilwoman Abaswader's points about this contractor who's prospectively going to get this contract is a good contractor, jobs in Greensboro, we continued it once. Is there a sense of the degree to which it's time sensitive?
Staff will always defer to what council advises. And so even if something is time sensitive, if you would like for us to defer, we will certainly do that.
Sure, I appreciate that. And 5 members of council will decide whatever 5 decide. But from a staff perspective, is there any information or facts that would help us understand whether or not it's time sensitive?
I think, is Jason Geary still here from engineering and inspection?
I'm here.
Okay, there he is. So Jason, can you answer that?
Thank you, Mayor and Council. There's not really a time sensitive issue with this one because it's just general.
Could you please give your name?
I apologize. It's Jason Geary. I'm the city engineer. And to answer your question, there's not really a time sensitive issue because it's really just replacing sidewalk that's in disrepair, that kind of thing. The main issue is, and this of course is purely for the contractor. I mean, he has other work lined up. So, he's got other projects with the city and elsewhere. So that would have to factor into his schedule. But of course, that's just for his benefit.
Okay. And then lastly, going to the last point or last series of questions, I think it's important that we get this information sooner, even in terms of the entire agenda that was provided on Friday, which is less than 2 business days for council persons and for the public to review things. There were additions in terms of names of entities to the agenda mere hours before the meeting. So, I think the sooner we can get those things, the greater ability it is to avoid situations like this on what it sounds like are categorically really important questions that go to a priority item of the council. So thank you.
Thank you. Dr. Wells?
I want to ask 3 questions, I guess. First one, was this on our agenda last time?
Yes, so if you recall, this was on the agenda last time and it was pulled for clarification. We didn't get a specific question, so I apologize that we should have reached out and asked what was the question. So my apologies that we didn't do that. But it was on last month's agenda and it was put on this agenda because it was asked to be discussed for clarification.
All right, so you didn't know what the question was?
Incorrect. Incorrect.
Please, Dr. Wells?
So if you did not know what the reason for the pulling last month, you didn't know what you were trying to find the answer to. Now, Councilwoman Hightower says she got the answer today. So what was it? What were you looking for, Sharon?
The question that she asked. So if nobody knew what the question was, how do you send me an answer? My question was, come on now. My question was, why were the goals combined? I asked that 30 days ago. Today, I get an answer. So if nobody knew what the question was, then you don't know how to answer. That's simple. So I asked the question straight out. And I just got that answer today in an email, Goldie.
I didn't remember the discussion about
Well,
it.
I remember the question because I always know what I
just know
write.
You pulled
My question.
Yeah, all right. So it got pulled the last time. Now, my question is, if we delay it, are we voting for this particular contractor, hoping that we can get another contractor that can find more MWBEs? Is that the reason if we would not accept it, that we would have to go to another contractor who would try to find NWBEs?
That's not the question.
But that is the question, because if there are not any MWBEs to fulfill the bids or whatever, then that's what I want to know.
True, because the participation is 37.13%. It's just a combined MWBE total.
Are we gonna get any higher percentage? Because see, my thing is, and I was getting in trouble with my community about this, but a lot of times there's nobody to even do it. The things that we want done. They don't have, and that was another one of them on here tonight. We didn't have anybody that had a company that could separate the mulch. You know, so some companies not out there to get it. So I'm just wondering if you delay it and another contractor comes and tries to get some MWBE in our area, are they gonna be able to find anybody? Because if they can't find them, it's no need for us to keep waiting on it because our sidewalks need to be repaired.
So, are you finished? I have one other question. I'd
Well,
like
you'll have to
ask.
sign up to speak.
How do I sign?
Dr. Wells, are you through? So I do think it's important that we're not talking about no MWBE participation here. We're talking about a bidder who has achieved 37.13%, which is one of the largest that we have. So it wasn't split between Ws and Ms, but they did get the MWBE participation. So whether it's all Ws or all Ms, it's still 37%, which is more than we've gotten on a lot of contracts.
You're right about that.
So I'm not through.
I requested to speak.
I'm
I pressed
speaking
the
and then,
button. I know
there-
you are, just wanted to know I pressed the button.
no, there are other speakers
That's fine.
behind me.
But I'm not finished with this.
And the memo from the MWBE office says documents submitted indicates that Atlantic Contracting Company is the selected vendor and has met the established MWBE goals. Now, while to staff, this may not be time sensitive, but to this bidder, it probably is. And we have had to rebid contracts because we've taken too long to actually give the bid out. And one in case is the Westridge Battleground that was bid 3 times. And once it had to be rebid because we waited too long and the contractor got other work. So it may not be time sensitive to engineering. It probably is time sensitive to those neighborhoods. And I'm sure it's time sensitive to the vendor, because they have to figure out where their work is, where they've scheduled things and what their commitments are. And their subcontractor, they have a subcontractor on this to help them, even though they normally self-perform. And they have to make sure that that subcontractor stays available. So I think it's important that we move ahead and vote on that this evening. The next speaker signed up to speak is Michelle Kennedy.
No, I just want to say, Kim, I understood what you were outlining to us, and that as a combined goal, it met the overall goal if those two were put together. I think what I hear Sharon talking about is an issue of subjectivity, right? Like if you combine those two and we're talking about limited availability of subcontractors, but we don't have any clear protocols around how we determine that there's limited availability, it leaves it up to a lot of subjectivity for somebody to say, well, I don't think there's a lot of them, and I've been doing this work for a long time, which I understand is important to know what folks are saying, but it doesn't give us clear parameters around it. So to me, whether we vote on this item tonight or we table this item, the bigger issue, so that we don't come back to this, for me, is a really clear parameter around under what circumstances do we allow combining goals? And what is the protocol you have to meet to say we're combining goals? And so that to me saves us a lot of these conversations moving down the road, and Sharon asking the question, you answering all of those things. So for me, whatever the decision is tonight, whether we vote on this or we table this, the biggest portion of this for me is walking out of tonight. We're going back, whether that's to Griffin and Strong or whether that's internally making a decision about what our protocols are going to be. So there's never a question about under what circumstances we combine goals and what the driver is that allows that to happen. And that to me solves the future problem. I understand it doesn't satisfy what Sharon's bringing up tonight, but that seems a really critical piece for us to address quickly. So that's all I wanted to add.
Thank you. Mr. Outling?
In connection with our MWBE program, I think most people know, We can't require that contracts go to women or minority businesses. We simply can't do it. In large part, what the program is designed to do is create rules that help ensure fairness and opportunity for people to compete for work from the city. In terms of the goals, they're just that. Sometimes goals are met, sometimes goals are exceeded, sometimes they fall short. That doesn't mean that we as a city have done anything that is incorrect or fails to meet our MWBE plan. My concern here is what are the actual structures and what's a part of the plan? And on a topic that everyone acknowledges very important, it could undermine the very purpose of the plan, there's a lack of clarity in that. And so, to me, that's a really significant thing. I mean, even if it's 100%, the processes have to be strong because that's the very purpose why we have an MWBE program. And so I'm glad that the applicant exceeds the goals, but it's important that the actual structure and the plan be right. Otherwise, there's not terribly much that the city is doing with the plan.
Thank you. Mrs. Hightower?
So I'm going to disagree again with everybody. Certainly you all want to say, well, we've exceeded 37%. No, we've put 37% in one bucket. This program is designed to have separate buckets, period. And that's MBE buckets and WBE buckets. This right here doesn't have anything to do with the company that we're talking about. The company's got two other jobs, so they've got a total of 3 jobs. So they gonna be working. And I have a problem when you say you're gonna combine goals because we don't have anybody over here that doesn't meet what we think is the scope of work that we think they should be doing. And so I think we stepped outside of the parameter of what this program was designed to be about. Why pay a company to do a disparity study and research all the data, all the numbers, and come up with 12 recommendations, and then turn around and we do the exact opposite? Those people on goal setting are nice people. They don't have that type of expertise and knowledge. They should be following the plan. And if we got down to where we determine the type of work is on the job and we don't have the availability, then we didn't meet the 24% goal for MBE, but we met the 13% goal for WBE. And I think, see, now we are creating passive discrimination within the body of the plan. And I think that's going to be the ultimate detriment of what is going to happen, because the next time you come across a job and you say, oh, I don't think we have enough people. We got a 27 county MSA area. We go all the way to Wake County. So if you determine you don't have anybody, you say, well, okay, we just throw it all in one bucket. So at the end of 5 years, when we get ready to do another disparity study, guess what the numbers are going to say? They're going to say that in the MBE bucket, we did 10%, but in the WBE bucket, we did 87%. Okay, that's still unfair. And what has occurred here tonight is unfair. The company is fine. I like the person that has the company. I respect them. This has nothing to do with that. So crossing the line into that was wrong. But people do and say what they want to say. That's fine. I'm talking about the process. And the process in this instance is incorrect and is wrong. And I don't agree with it. And I think when it starts, now you've set this precedent, it's only going to get worse. Because you're going to just use it as an easy answer for, well, we didn't find anybody. So you just ignored Griffin and Strong. 5 legal civil rights attorneys who've done disparity studies for years. You've just totally ignored what they've said. we should be doing.
Is there anybody else to speak?
Yes, Goldie and Tammy.
Yeah, I'd like to be
It looks
next.
like to me that we could settle it, just separate them. Put the 13 somewhere and the other somewhere in the document. And that would settle it, because you did combined, but what she's talking about is separated. And this to me is an almost like an isolated incident that they had to work with. Now, if we put such standards on them so that the committee can't make any adjustments, the council can't make any adjustments, and we just stick to it. Now, some things are lawful but not expedient. Now, in order for us to get the work done, and what she explained to us, it was a tidbit here and a tidbit there. And to keep it from looking bad, I guess, y'all just stuck it together. But what Sharon wants is take the little bit and say it's for women, say the little bit that is taken for the other. And then maybe at the end, just say, we did not meet the separate goals, but combined, we met the goals. And that's what we are going for, is when the goal is met. And I understand what you're saying, Sharon. I really do. And that should be our desired goal. But sometimes you just can't reach it in that same manner. So let's do what we can to move forward. We need the sidewalks fixed.
Thank you, Dr. Wells. Mrs. Thurm?
I'd like to clarify, because I feel like I'm hearing two different things here. What I understood from your email and what I understood from your explanation tonight is that the entire scope of 200 and some odd $1,000 broke out into 3 chunks. 2 of those chunks were very small. One took up the bulk of that contract. When you went to percentages of each of those line items, it was kind of weird, like a 0.5% or whatever. But what I heard Councilwoman Hightower saying is that you all made a decision that there weren't any vendors there to fulfill that. And I just want to clarify, was it a decision about we don't have the vendors to clarify, to fulfill those goals had we set them? Or was it a decision about just the way the job broke down into line items?
Right. It was the second answer of what you said. So it wasn't about how many contractors or vendors we had available. It was how you would break up the work in order to set the goals. So the 4 inches of sidewalk, the 6 inches of sidewalk, the 8 inches of sidewalk, they would have had to identify and set goals on the 4 inches, the 6 inches, the 8 inches. And that's just not a feasible way to set the goals, because they were smaller segments of work.
I think that's an important clarification, an important distinction in the conversation here today, is what are we really talking about? And I don't hear the fact that the committee, the goal setting committee, decided that we didn't have the right number of people, or decided that we did, or made a decision about who could bid and who couldn't. It's the feasibility of how the system works and how the percentages of these line items broke down. I agree with Councilwoman Hightower. I think that's something for us to work on, to define that more clearly, but I don't see a problem with us, and I'd be in favor of voting on this tonight.
So what I would like to say is, when we have a question for Griffin and Strong, it really, I think, needs to be in writing. And, preferably, I think it should come from somebody on staff, whether it's Kim Sowell or the city attorney, so that we're all on the same question and getting the same answer. And there's been another issue with Griffin and Strong, a question that came up just within the last month or so. Maybe it's time to have them back at another work session as we move on to talk about things just like this. But I think it's very important that the same questions are being asked and the same answer is being gotten by everybody. So What I would suggest in the future, if there's a question for Griffin and Strong, that it really is in writing. So we know what the question was and what the exact answer is. Because, a lot can be left to interpretation or even on Griffin and Strong's part. So I would prefer that those questions either come through the city attorney or come through the assistant city manager so that we're all on the same page and understand what it is. But I would encourage that we probably get another work session so we can work through things like this.
Well, Madam
Could I
Mayor, I
just-
know I'm not on the thing, but that's what I was going to say. I would like a work session on this, and then I will withdraw my motion if we can agree to have that.
Okay.
And I would like to
Could I-
have
could I
them
just
here in
comment?
person, not on Zoom, because I think the last time they came here on Zoom, they were under the wrong impressions of why they were here. And so therefore they kind of got put in. But I sent that email to them. So they have that email that I got today. And again, so for clarity's sake, that isn't right. Okay, but we can't get stuff 30 minutes before something this in-depth that I know I asked for 30 days ago and today.
Understood. Understood. Ms. Abuzwaiter, did you have something you
Just
wanted to
very
close
quickly,
out? And
I just wanted to say, I really want to encourage my colleagues to not delay this again, having been in small business.
I withdrew my motion.
No, I know. I just wanted to clarify, having been in small business, it's not a huge company, but it is a valued company and they have to plan as well. So when we delay for companies, whether it's on a consent agenda or wherever it is on the agenda, I want us to be mindful of that because our local companies are really, everyone's been through a pandemic, everyone's catching up, everyone's trying to do the best they can. So I just want to encourage everyone to consider that when we have companies come before us and when there are questions. So I appreciate that.
thank you. Mrs. Hoffman?
Just one comment. And I think in terms of my visualizing this work, I think sometimes we have to look at the work. And it seems to me that it's just not efficient to chop up, laying cement or pouring cement for sidewalks, to chop that up into small segments. And I think that's kind of what we're dealing with here in this situation. So, maybe what we're talking about perhaps is certainly applicable here, but might not be in general for lots of other kinds of work.
Thank you. Mrs. Johnson withdrew her motion to postpone.
Based on the agreement that we're going to have a work session and this will be the key topic.
Thank you. Ms. Abuzwaiter has a motion. It needs a second, seconded by Mrs. Hoffman. Let's see if we can. So we do have a motion and a second while this is going. Mrs. Hoffman?
Yes.
Ms. Kennedy?
Yes.
Dr. Wells?
Yes.
Mrs. Johnson? I am a yes. Mrs. Abuzwaiter?
Yes.
Mr. Outling?
No.
Mrs. Thurm?
Yes.
And Mrs. Hightower?
No,
I believe that passed 8-1.
It's
8-2.
8-2.
8-2, sorry. Mr. Outling, did you vote no? 7-2, 7-2, sorry. Move on to the next item. Item G2 is a resolution authorizing contract award in the amount of $189,054.25 to Hills Machinery Company LLC for the rental of equipment at White Street Landfill.
No, it hasn't been moved.
So
I'll
Dr.
second.
Wells
I'll second.
and so it is moved by Dr. Wells and seconded by Mrs. Johnson.
What am I supposed to do?
Yeah, you got it. Click it right there.
I didn't want to move it. I wanted to second it.
It. Mrs. Hoffman,
Yes.
Ms. Kennedy,
Yes.
Dr. Wells?
Yes.
Mrs. Johnson?
Yes.
Ms. Abuzawader?
Yes.
Mr. Outling?
Yes.
Mrs. Thurm?
Yes.
And Mrs. Hightower? And that passes 9-0. Item number G3, resolution contract award in the amount of $178,197.24 to Hills Machinery Company LLC for the rental of equipment at the White Street landfill.
Move the item.
Second.
Okay, that's moved and seconded by Dr. Wells. We need the screen in the meantime. Ms. Hoffman,
Yes.
Ms. Kennedy,
Yes.
Dr. Wells?
Yes.
Mrs. Johnson?
Yes.
I am a yes. Mrs. Abuzawader?
Yes.
Mr. Outling?
Yes.
Mrs. Thurm?
Yes.
And Mrs. Hightower? And that passes 9-0. Item number G4 is a resolution approving contract change order in the amount of $900,000 for contract 2017-5246 with EcoFlow for household hazardous waste disposal.
Right now.
Second.
Was that moved by Mrs. Hoffman
Ms. Hoffman.
and seconded by Ms. Thurm?
Yes.
Okay. Mrs. Hoffman,
Yes.
Ms. Kennedy,
Yes.
Move.
Dr. Wells,
Yes.
Mrs. Johnson?
Yes.
Hold on a second. I am a yes. Mrs. Abuzawader?
Yes.
Mr. Outling,
Yes.
Mrs. Thurm,
Yes.
and Mrs. Hightower.
Yes.
And that passes 9-0. We are going to read G5, 6, 7, 8, and 9 together. Proceedings introducing bond orders authorizing housing bonds, parks and recreation bonds, firefighting facility bonds, law enforcement facility bonds, transportation bonds, designating the finance director to file a sworn statement of debt and statement of total estimated interest with the city clerk, appointing Womble Bond Dixon LLP as bond counsel, and calling a public hearing for the bond orders. I do want to say we have the public hearing for August 2nd, which is a Monday, and that's not normally when we would have a council meeting due to National Night Out. How time sensitive is the public hearing? Because I want to make sure that it's on a day that people are aware that council's meeting.
We can move it to the subsequent meeting if necessary.
If that is the, if council agrees, I would rather have it on a regularly scheduled meeting. So we'll change that. Okay. We do have two speakers, Catherine Holcomb on the housing bond and Hester Petty on the law enforcement. And Ms. Petty is joining us by Zoom. But Ms. Holcomb, if you would go ahead, and you have 3 minutes.
I'm Catherine Holcomb. I live at 1911 Rosecrest Drive, represented by Mr. Outling. As a constituent, I urge you to vote to ask the voters to invest a substantial amount of money in affordable housing through the $30 million referendum. Last fall, you agreed to a 10-year strategic housing plan for helping homeowners, aspiring homeowners, and homeless. This is very important because too many people in Greensboro are struggling to pay rent and mortgage along with their other needs, and now housing is in such short supply, making it harder to move. This affects children's schooling performance, the spread of COVID, and the mental health of families. And thirdly, there's talk, in my book club at least, of the inequity of where affordable housing has been placed in the past. Through the American Rescue Plan, federal and state politicians are discussing the use of funds for housing, and Greensboro needs to be ready with a very good plan to accept and use funding in the best ways. I'm embarrassed to say that living here for 72 years, it's only in my retirement years that I've tried to be the good citizen that I was taught to be in 4th grade. It is so hard to stay informed and to show up for meetings when you're working, raising a family, and all that. But the upside of COVID is that I've had time to be more tuned in to read and learn from housing experts like Dr. Sills at UNCG and experts all over the country about how they solve housing problems. There are great ideas out there, and I have some ideas myself. In Greensboro, I know of one church who bought a house nearby and provide housing for people in need. Why didn't my church thinking of that? Why aren't we addressing that in neighborhoods? In Charlotte, Housing First is the motto of the Charlotte-Mecklenburg Council, and they built Moore Place as a permanent affordable housing complex with 120 apartments and services. Raleigh is about to duplicate that. I don't know these ideas. Perhaps you do as people working for us. But therefore, I would love in my city to see more citizens participating in government, in being a citizen, knowing that needs of poor people in housing affect me as a non-poor person in my settled housing. If I served on council, I would want citizens' ideas and feedback. If more folks understood, I think they would want to talk about our best healthy community. And I would love for you to please, my second thing is to please sponsor discussions in neighborhoods and churches with the bond referendum.
And that is our intention, because we know that's what we have to do in order to make it successful. I do want to say that the city of Greensboro has been doing Housing First and rapid rehousing for a couple of years. A lot of our money this last year was redirected to emergency shelter. And so we did have that missed opportunity cost the last 18 months or so. And I know that Mrs. Thurm and Ms. Kennedy went down to Charlotte and visited Moore Place. And we are looking at a permanent supportive housing situation right now. So everything that you said is spot on. And we hope that you will advocate for these bonds with us. I don't know, Michelle, Tammy, if you want to add anything to that.
Yeah, sorry, I hit the button on my phone. It was like going off. Again, hold on one second. I don't know what is happening. This is what happens when you have 13-year-olds who use your phones. All right. Sorry.
And jingle bells.
There we go. Whew. Sorry about that. Yeah, I was going to say we did go down to Moore Place, and I actually just got back from Colorado doing the same thing. So looking at all of the options that are available to us for supportive housing options and what's possible here. And we're well aware of what's been established in Charlotte and Asheville and in other locations across the country. And Housing First has been the model for our community for a long time. So it is one of those things that we actually are not far behind on. We're actually kind of leading the game as it relates to those types of issues, and looking forward to have conversations with the community about how this bond can further support those actions for people who are struggling with affordable housing concerns.
Thank you. And then Hester Petty, I believe, is on Zoom. Ms. Petty?
Yeah, good evening. Hester Petty, 3402 Canterbury Street here in Greensboro. First, I'd like to thank Ms. Hightower for publicly clarifying the in-person sign-up procedure for city council meetings, because sometimes the information doesn't filter down to us regular folks very quickly. This is going to be kind of short tonight, so I'm opposed to the resolution authorizing $6 million in law enforcement facilities bonds. Surprise, surprise. I don't know the specifics of what will be done with this bond money, but I do know that the 2 federal lawsuits against Greensboro police officers have already cost taxpayers over $1 million in fees for private lawyers. And both cases are far from being done. So you've tabled an independent investigation into the Greensboro Police Department twice now. And if you intend to do nothing to make the Greensboro police officers accountable to the people shouldn't have to pay for improving police facilities. Police misconduct is costing taxpayers millions of dollars. Perhaps we should let the GPD hold a bake sale if they need to have their facilities fixed up. Please drop this from the bond issues. Thank you.
Thank you. So we do have a variety of motions. G5, I need a motion to adopt. It is the 30 million for the housing
Move
bond.
the item. Second.
Moved by Ms. Kennedy, seconded by Ms. Thurm. Council, please vote. Mrs. Hoffman,
Yes.
Ms. Kennedy,
Yes.
Dr. Wells?
Yes.
Mrs. Johnson?
Yes.
I am a yes. Mrs. Abuzawader?
Yes.
Mr. Outling?
Yes.
Ms. Thurm?
Yes.
And Mrs. Hightower?
Yes.
And that passes 9-0. Item number, okay, hold on a second. Item number G6 is the Parks and Recreation Bond in the amount of 70 million.
So moved.
Move the item.
That is.
Second.
Right. So that is moved by Mrs. Johnson, seconded by Mrs. Hightower. While we're bringing that up to vote, Mrs. Hoffman,
Yes.
Ms. Kennedy,
Yes.
Dr. Wells?
Yes.
Mrs. Johnson?
Absolutely.
I am a yes. Mrs. Abuzawader?
Yes.
Mr. Outling?
Yes.
Mrs. Thurm?
Yes.
And Mrs. Hightower?
Yes.
And that passes 9-0. Item number G7 is the firefighter bonds in
Move
the
the
amount
item.
of
Second.
14 million. I'm sorry.
Move the
who moved
item.
it?
Go ahead.
Moved by Ms. Kennedy, seconded by Mrs. Johnson. While we're waiting for the vote, Mrs. Hoffman,
Yes.
Ms. Kennedy,
Yes.
Dr. Wells?
Yes.
Mrs. Johnson?
Yes.
I'm a yes. Mrs. Abuzawader?
Yes.
Mr. Outling?
Yes.
Mrs. Thurm?
Yes.
And Mrs. Hightower?
Yes.
And that passes 9-0. Item G8, which is the law enforcement bonds in the
Move
amount
the
of
item.
$6 million. Moved by Mrs. Hoffman, seconded by Dr. Wells. Mrs. Hoffman,
Yes.
Ms. Kennedy,
Yes.
Dr. Wells?
Yes.
Mrs. Johnson?
Yes.
I'm a yes. Mrs. Abuzawader?
Yes.
Mr. Outling?
Yes.
Mrs. Thurm?
Yes.
And Mrs. Hightower?
No, I don't think this is the appropriate time.
And that passes 8-1. And our last bond is for transportation in the amount of $15 million.
Move the item.
Second.
Moved by Ms. Thurm, seconded by Ms. Abuzawader. Mrs. Hoffman?
Yes.
Ms. Kennedy?
Yes.
Dr. Wells?
Yes.
Mrs. Johnson?
Yes.
I am a yes. Mrs. Abuzawader?
Yes.
Mr. Outling?
Yes.
Ms. Thurm?
Yes.
And Mrs. Hightower?
Yes.
And that passes 9-0. Okay. The city council designates the interim finance director to make and file with the city clerk the sworn statement of debt and the city and the statement of total estimated interest on the bonds authorized by the foregoing bond orders. I need a motion to fix the date and time of a public hearing for that second meeting in August, which would be
August 17th, Mayor.
August what?
17th.
August 17th.
Move the item.
In the city council chambers in the MMOB located at 300 West Washington Street, and to direct the city clerk to publish said orders once in the News and Record no later than the 6th day before the said date. And that was moved by Ms. Kennedy, seconded by Mrs. Thurm, and Mrs. Hoffman.
Yes.
Ms. Kennedy,
Yes.
Dr. Wells.
Yes.
Mrs. Johnson.
Yes.
I'm a yes. Mrs. Abuzawader.
Yes.
Mr. Outling.
Yes.
Mrs. Thurm.
Yes.
And Mrs. Hightower. Yes. And that passes 9-0. We have one more. I need a motion to appoint Womble Bond Dixon LLP to serve as bond
So moved.
counsel
Second.
to the city council in connection with the authorization of the foregoing proposed bonds of the city. I'm sorry, who moved that?
I did.
Moved by Mrs. Hoffman, seconded by Ms. Kennedy. Mrs. Hoffman,
Yes.
Ms. Kennedy,
Yes.
Dr. Wells.
Yes.
Mrs. Johnson.
Yes.
I'm a yes. Mrs. Abuzawader.
Yes.
Mr. Outling.
Yes.
Mrs. Thurm.
Yes.
And Mrs. Hightower.
I don't see that item on here for Womble Carlisle.
It's on 7, it's on number 7 in red.
It is, they are our bond counsel.
There's nothing here on mine, but it's not been acting right all night anyway, so. Is that who has been the bond counsel in the past? Womble
Yes,
Carlisle.
Mr. Davis, they have.
Is that who you're working with, Mr. City Attorney? All right, thank you, yes. Where's it at?
And Mrs. Hightower, did you vote yes?
Yes.
Okay, and that passes 9-0. Item number 10 is a resolution to approve the memorandum of agreement, MOA, between the state of North Carolina local governments on proceeds relating to the settlement of the opioid
that-
litigation. And
That matter was swapped.
Huh?
I think we need to, I don't know, was that,
That was removed from the agenda earlier today.
did we
and
move
the-
that
the new
earlier in
item
the
is
agenda?
Yeah, is the Piggly Wiggly.
We're on Piggly Wiggly now. number
Okay,
10.
thank you.
That's what it is.
Okay. Which
We
item?
are on G11, which is an ordinance, unless I have the wrong.
We're on G10.
Yeah,
It's G10, Mayor.
It's G10.
Okay, hold on a second.
It has to do with the settlement of the opioid.
Yeah, I'm sorry,
Litigation.
hold on one second.
It's wrong on our things.
All right.
Electronic version.
So G10,
The electronic version is correct.
okay, well, I'm looking
It
at the, no, item number G10 is a resolution to amend the 60-month 500,000 economic development loan and 250,000 urban development investment grant for SNS Capital LLC to revitalize a long-term vacant big box shell originally granted by council on June 16th, 2020.
And Madam Mayor, I asked to be recused from this item. One of my law partners at the Brooks Pierce Law Firm represents SNS in an unrelated but ongoing matter. SNS Capital was an entity named, added to the agenda hours before the meeting. So my apologies for my tardiness in sharing that recusal request, but it was added to the agenda to Councilwoman Hightower's point on a different item hours before the meeting.
Thank you. Do we have a motion on G10?
So moved.
Move the item.
Second.
So moved by Mrs. Hightower, seconded by Dr. Wells. Let me, hold on one moment. If we can, the voting
Back and
screen would
forth.
come up in the meantime.
Yeah,
Madam
Mrs.
Mayor, can you
Hoffman,
confirm
Yes.
who seconded?
I seconded it.
Ms. Kennedy,
Yes.
Dr. Wells,
Yes.
Where's the
Mrs.
motion?
Johnson?
Yes.
I am a yes. Mrs. Abuzawader?
Yes.
Mrs. Thurm?
Yes.
And Mrs. Hightower. I did realize that we did not vote to excuse Mr. Outling. So if we could do that by, do we have to revote the item? If we,
He didn't vote, and I think you can just,
okay, so if,
Says that he-
do we have a motion and a second for the record to recuse Mr. Outling?
Move that.
recuse.
Second.
Moved by Ms. Kennedy, seconded by Mrs. Thurm. All in favor, say aye.
Aye. So
And that
I,
passes 8-0.
so I didn't verbally
Sharon hadn't
vote.
voted yet.
Yeah, I didn't verbally vote.
So the vote wasn't complete, so that way the recusal before the vote was complete probably works.
You know, we're having a little trouble trying to get used to this new voting system and for it to catch up with what we're doing.
behind
Do you want us to revote that?
No, no. What
Okay.
I was explaining was that, essentially, since the vote wasn't complete, Councilman Outling hadn't voted.
I see.
and then you all voted to excuse him, so his non-voting doesn't become
Okay.
an
So
excuse.
that passes 8-0 with one recusal.
So I do want to speak real quick to
Yes.
this item. Mr. Outland, you're right. And I had told them when we brought this back that we wanted to go to next month, we could. But it's only an extension, nothing else changed. And it was an extension, so I certainly do understand your concern. So I was okay with, making sure that everybody had an opportunity. It's just for an item that, because of COVID, they kind of really weren't able to do any development on this site, and some other logistics had to be cleared up around this particular area. And so they have committed to doing that. So I think this will be a good, place for Food Desert and for the community. They've been waiting so long, so hopefully they can get this done in less time than is proposed. So I just want to I wanted to make that aware of everyone, so.
Well, and they were initially delayed because they had to do a phase
An
1
environmental
study, an
study.
environmental impact study, and then they had to abate the environmental impacts, and then they were hit with COVID. So it was a number of reasons on this extension. And that does pass 8-0. Yes. Item G11 is an ordinance amendment for the enactment of an ordinance entitled Section 17-8 Civil Liability for Illegal Disposal. I think.
Move the item.
Second.
So that is moved by Ms. Thurm, seconded by Dr. Wells. Before we vote, though, I think, it's something that that Sharon, Tammy, and Goldie were working on, and that maybe it would be good just for a brief explanation. But we can go ahead and take the vote. Mrs. Hoffman?
Yes.
Ms. Kennedy?
Yes.
Dr. Wells?
Yes.
Mrs. Johnson?
What is it?
It's the
It
dumping.
is,
Oh, I got it. Yes.
They just wanted a
Um,
pretty
yes.
name. Didn't really matter.
I am a yes. Mrs. Abusawader?
Yes.
Mr. Outling?
Yes.
Ms. Thurm?
Yes.
And Mrs. Hightower?
Yes.
And that passes 9-0. If we could just have a very brief explanation.
I think. Well, while they're trying to decide who they want to talk to, I will say this all started because Goldie and I and Tammy also have dumping issues in our districts where we are probably, poor field operation people get a call from us daily. We took a tour of some sites, I think a few months ago with the mayor, that was some of the top dumping spots. And what we really kind of come to a conclusion is this is really not our residents doing this. This is some outside dumping coming into the city. But it's a health and safety hazard as well. And so what we had currently on the books didn't adequately address it. So we worked with our legal. And I will say that in the new ordinance, there are civil penalties, not criminal penalties. But there are civil penalties, and hopefully they will get people's attention and they will stop using our streets as places to just dump whatever it is they don't want. Or if somebody pays them to clean out a house and they just ride down the street and see some fields, they just throw it out. Don't have to go to the landfill and keep the money in their pocket. Hopefully this will change. Combined with the cameras we're gonna get as well, I think we hopefully will see some changes. So that's why we all work together to get this ordinance done. So, Ms. Cindy.
Thank you. I think you've described it pretty well yourself there. My name is Cynthia Blue. I'm Interim Director of Neighborhood Development, and we worked with the Field Operations Department, the Police Department, and the Legal Department on the production of this ordinance amendment. What this does is imposes a civil penalty for the act of illegal disposal, otherwise commonly referred to as dumping, on either public or private property. The Field Operations Department will provide the cameras and install the cameras on sites that focus on either the public property or upon request on private property. If they are able to capture photo evidence that includes a license tag number of the car of the persons who are doing the disposal, they will forward that to the code enforcement department in neighborhood development, and code enforcement will take action to locate the owner of that car and to issue the civil penalty. Appeals of those civil penalties will go to the Minimum Housing Standards Commission to be heard. The initial penalty is $500 for the first offense and $1,000 for subsequent offenses. And it's meant to be a restorative for the programmatic costs by the city to carry out these enforcements.
Thank you. And thank you all for working on that. I think it's going to make a big difference to our neighborhoods. So just for the record, I'm going to move this in advance. So somebody else will have to second.
And then I think we need to thank the attorneys who worked so hard, these attorneys, to craft the right legalese or whatever, yeah, so that it would be acceptable.
Thank you, Mr. Baker.
Tony Baker, City Attorney's Office, happy to do it.
Thank you. Okay, as I said, I'm moving this in advance. Ordinance to amend War Memorial Coliseum Complex Fund in the amount of $10 million for appropriation of shuttered venue
So moved.
operator grant.
Second.
Yeah. I do want to say that kudos to the Coliseum staff and to our finance staff. I know that the paperwork on this was very onerous, but to get $10 million for the Coliseum complex will really help us in this coming budget. Mr. City Manager, Mr. Assistant City Manager, maybe you can tell us how this will, let us vote on it first, but because we want to make sure we do it properly. But yeah, how that will fit in. I know that we can't be retroactive, but how will it fit in this year's budget? And so Mrs. Hoffman?
Yes.
Ms. Kennedy?
Yes.
Madam Mayor,
Wells?
pardon me.
Yes.
I'm sorry, we never got anyone to second that.
Mrs. Johnson?
Yes.
I'm a yes. Mrs. Abuzawader?
Yes.
Mr. Outling?
Yes.
Mrs. Thurm?
Yes.
And Mrs. Hightower?
Yes.
And that passes 9-0. Mr. Davis, maybe you can explain how this will work into this coming budget.
Sure. Thank you, Mayor. And let me also just add my thanks in particular to two folks at the Coliseum, Mr. Kurt Palmer, the business office manager, and Mr. Michael Rupp, who is a business analyst for the Coliseum. They were the primary staff who did the work on this and stayed with the process through the entire application and evaluation. It was about a 6-month process. We first learned about even the opportunity of the shuttered grant funding in January of 2021, and they began working on the website, trying to get on at various times when it would crash, and they would not give up. Finally got the application in April, and then we got the good news earlier this week. So,
And let me say, Tanger was not eligible for shuttered venue because you actually had to have opened and had revenue. So this was for the Coliseum complex minus Tanger since it closed 3 days before it opened.
right, yes. And we did press that issue, but no, we were told if you've never been open, then you've never been shuttered. So.
Right,
We did.
which is really unfortunate. And let me not to interrupt you even further, but you can see that Tanger is just rolling out announcement after announcement, plays, comedians, children's shows, concerts, The Price is Right. So, I think in September of like the 30 days, it's busy 28 days. So just imagine if that had the opportunity to open. Rihanna Giddens just announced today, and it's wonderful to bring her home and to be able to hear her perform in the state-of-the-art sound system, probably what will be rated the best sound system in the country. So Mr. Davis, back to you.
Sure. So actually, we have quite a bit of flexibility within the Coliseum. Expenditures going all the way back to March of 2020 are eligible. So we'll be using these funds. We'll initially set them up in a grant fund. We'll draw them down as necessary. We'll use them initially for the current year, and any deficit that we might want to cover for fiscal year 21, 22, but we can also go all the way back to March of 2020 to cover eligible expenses. So this will go a long way to, if you can think back to that presentation Matt gave you many months ago about what kind of deficits over and above what we would typically see we were facing. This will go a long ways towards combating that.
Thank you. Thank you. We only have one more item and then boards and commissions and comments. So I think we should just power through. Item number G13 is general employee step plan implementation consideration. It seems.
Move the item.
Second.
So it is moved by Mrs. Johnson, seconded by Ms. Kennedy. Comment, Ms. Abuzawader. I'm trying to think of. Yeah, I don't see where the speakers were to request to speak. I need to. How do we, where is the request to speak?
She had opened the vote already, Madam Mayor. So if you guys can vote, then she can open the activate to speak.
Well, the, you know, what the speakers may change somebody's vote.
We
So
have that. We have it now.
Not bloody like.
if you, okay, Ms. Abuzawader?
Thank you, Madam Mayor, and I'll be brief. I know we want to power on through, but I will not be voting for the step plan. I want to make it very plain that Human Resources sent the survey out to the 1,100 employees who were to be affected by the step plan. Out of those 1,100, I think around 600 some odd were returned. Out of those that were returned, 56% did not want the step plan. They preferred to keep the merit plan. 22% wanted the step plan, and 22% said it didn't really matter to them either way. So even if you add those two together, that's 44%, but 56% of those who returned the surveys wanted to keep the merit pay increase. I find it very difficult to, when we sit up here and we want to say that we want to hear from the stakeholders, staff does everything in their power to get the stakeholders to the table, and then we are not going with what the majority of the employees want. I think we're going to find that perhaps in a couple of years, this could come back to haunt us in some ways. And I would also like to mention that, you know, we are right in the middle of a city manager search. And of course, you know how much I appreciate you, Mr. Wilson, but we are in the middle of a search, getting ready to launch that. And a new city manager may have a whole different outlook on all this. Or I know that the city manager is our employee and they will do what we vote on in the majority. But at this time, I am not for the step plan. I know most everyone else is, and that's fine, but I wanted to state why. So thank you, Madam Mayor.
Thank you, Mrs. Thurm.
Thank you. I certainly appreciate Councilwoman Abuzawader's rationale because based on how the employees voted. However, I do think the step plan is a complex issue. I think perhaps while we had good participation in the survey, I'm not sure that people necessarily understood exactly what's involved in the step plan in some instances. Some instances they did, some they may not have. As I expressed earlier, I am willing to support this step plan for this first year. We know I've asked and been assured that should it not work out, that we can roll it back. Of course, we're not going to decrease people's pay, but we could cancel moving it forward. I am not, and I want to go on record now that I am not in favor of going to the next group of employees. I think at this level of employee, the step plan makes sense. Not sure that I'm in favor of going for the next set of levels further higher up. So I will support this at this time. I'm willing to take a chance on it. The employees have asked for this for quite some time, since before I was on council. And so I think for this year at these levels, I will support it and we'll move forward from there. So that's my rationale for supporting it this time.
Thank you. Mrs. Hoffman?
You know, I've been quite clear, as we've discussed this in the past, I have never in my entire career been in favor of a step plan. I think people should be rewarded and compensated for outstanding performance. I think a step plan just really just is kind of a slippery slope to mediocrity. And so I'm not in favor of this plan.
Ms. Kennedy?
Yeah, I just want to emphasize some of the reasons that I am completely in support of this plan. It's been a kind of a standard for our first responders for some time. And if you ask any, for example, union across this country, they will tell you it's one of the safest things you can do to create equity for frontline workers. The surveys, you're talking about 1,100 surveys, and we got about 600 of them back. And that fails to take into consideration a lot of the folks who work for the city of Greensboro that don't exactly check their computers on a daily basis, or who wouldn't have accessed a survey in the first place to have given a response. And I think to Tammy's point, before I was on this council, and one of the first things that people brought to me as I ran for council was the importance of this and equity for our city employees. And I think we all agree, should be our first priority, whether we believe in a step plan or not. But I've heard enough city workers, frontline workers, the people out in the streets doing the things that keep the city moving every day, who've said that they're looking for equity, they're looking for stability, they're looking for ways that they get rewarded for doing their job, and it's not a subjective and favoritism-based system. And this is exactly that for me. So I'm thrilled to be supporting a step plan tonight.
I concur with that.
Thank you. Mr. Outling?
Thank you. So we've been talking about this actually for a number of years. So to a degree, it feels like Groundhog Day. I regrettably won't be supporting this item. I will, however, say I really understand and respect the views of others on council that disagree. You know, whether it's stakeholders or interest groups, whether it's city employee compensation or dealing with zoning matters where interest groups get really involved. I think it's important to recognize that we should be informed by input from everyone in our community, including stakeholders, but obviously council members have to make the tough decisions. On this one, it's not as tough for me personally. In the same vein as stated by Councilwoman Hoffman, I think it's really important to create a standard that promotes excellence. And one of the ways you do that is by having a merit-based system where you can and where it makes sense. Obviously, as our wonderful staff has advised us, compensation isn't the only thing that determines satisfaction, but where employees get paid the same, notwithstanding their lack of performance, and that is viewed by employees who do excel and do go the extra mile. Take that call at the close of business on a Friday to make sure someone's trash can gets put away rather than waiting until Monday. I think that they can have a real adverse incentive by not having merit be a component of their compensation. I think it also encourages those excellent employees for whom it is a motivating factor, or it is significant that they be recognized in that way. I think it encourages them to take their skills like LeBron did to Miami. They can take their skills to High Point, Durham, or elsewhere and be employed and recognized there. One council member, both at this meeting and at a prior meeting, I think raised an excellent point in noting that for public safety employees, they're on step plan compensation comparable to what many council members would like to do today. In terms of my reasoning and why I feel like it's appropriate for public safety employees, but not appropriate for other employees, as I stated previously, where employee performance can be really measured in really objective ways, I think that merit makes a whole lot of sense. So by way of example, my father is a bus driver for Charlotte Area Transit. His performance can be measured in really objective ways. If he hits his metrics being on time on his routes, He either does or he doesn't. He's either good at doing that or he's not, and he's compensated accordingly. I will also lastly add, because I think it was an excellent point raised by Ms. Hoffman, very rarely do you see step compensation outside of government work. And I think that's for good reason. And I think it's a little bit, for those who are understanding the decisions, it can be hard to swallow and hard to understand why in their jobs, it's so important that they perform well as a basis for their compensation. But for essentially those who they provide money to support their salaries in the form of taxes and fees, that they not have that same employment structure. So again, I appreciate all the views on it. I respectfully disagree from where I think the majority is going.
Thank you. Mrs. Hightower?
Thank you. I am going to be supporting the step plan like a couple other have mentioned. I've been talking about this step plan with employees for at least 7 years and before. And so sometimes I realize that why it looks like they may have been in the majority that didn't want the step plan, sometimes that minority voice is not heard. And so I talked to some employees who said, you know, I wouldn't mind the step plan, but I didn't put it down because I didn't want to hear what others were going to say. There's a lot of subtle retaliation going on around this merit program. And I think that if we implement the step plan, there's going to be some equity and fairness that we haven't seen and that the employees have not experienced in quite a while. And I think sometimes you just simply have to do the right thing. And in this instance, this is the right thing to do for the right reason, to raise the morale of the employees who don't feel like they've been heard for many years. Even when we talk about amounts of pay and who gets raises and who doesn't get raises, we've created an imbalance of inequity and a morale problem. And I think the step plan can begin to change some of that. So I'm supporting it. Sometimes, even though their voice may not have seemed loud on paper, it may be louder than we think it is. So I think tonight is the right thing to do. Let's do the right thing for a change, for the right reason. Thank you.
So we do have a motion and a second to enact the step plan, I believe the motion was. Well, we'll wait for the vote screen to come up. Mrs. Hoffman?
No.
Ms. Kennedy?
Yes.
Dr. Wells?
Yes.
Mrs. Johnson?
Yes.
I am a no. Mrs. Abuzawader?
No.
Mr. Outling?
No.
Mrs. Thurm?
Yes.
And Mrs. Hightower?
Yes.
And that passes 5-4. Well, now let's do our boards and commission appointments. Mrs. Hoffman?
I don't have anyone, but don't forget
Yeah.
yours.
Ms. Kennedy? Boards and
No,
commissions?
not tonight.
Dr. Wells?
Yes, I'd like to place in the data bank and appoint LaToya
So we-
Solomon.
So which, is this for zoning?
Yes,
And which district is she?
2.
2? So we'll have 3 people from District 2.
Yeah. Remember, I told you.
But I,
So you do have, so I asked the city clerk to confirm.
well, we have, this is another thing. Now, what we've done, what we needed, we can, somebody that has the vacancy. Who has a
I have a
vacancy?
She
vacancy,
has a
but it needs to go
vacancy.
to 3 or 5.
Well, 1, 3, or 5.
1, 3, or
3
5.
Okay.
And Rosa just
But
resigned.
we do have 2 vacancies.
We
And
do.
last night, they had 2 vacancies. I don't know if they did the meeting before. They had somebody who showed up at the meeting late. We really have to get that zoning commission. We need it to be at a full complement. So Dr.
I was going by your directions. remember?
Yeah,
But I
So
would
you
like
made
to
a
suggest,
mistake.
I made,
You made a mistake.
I made a
on that.
mistake.
Okay.
So it's 1, 3,
All
or
right.
5.
All
Yeah.
right, so the person that. I
But go
have,
ahead and put her in the data bank and maybe we can find another
find
position
somewhere
for her.
for her.
She wants to serve on one of the commissions or boards.
Yeah,
And I just thought her qualifications just really would make her a good person for this with her resume and her experiences.
Yeah, so I made an error. It's 1, 3, or 5.
Okay, then, well, I placed in the data bank then.
Thank you.
I would like suggestions from District 1, 3, and 5 to appoint to the zoning
And
committee.
we really have to do it at our next meeting.
Well, would you get those to me before the next meeting?
Yeah, and I will too, because we need a black female on there too. We need someone up there
Well,
like
which
that.
is what Dr. Wells,
Right, which is what
Yes.
she had, yeah.
yes,
So because we don't have.
correct.
So I'll have someone, hopefully by next meeting. I've got them looking.
Okay. Dr. Wells, anything else? Mrs. Johnson?
No.
So I do, go ahead.
Want to thank the.
Well, we're just doing just boards and commissions right now. So Steve Friedland has resigned from GC Jack, and the executive committee has suggested Adam Marshall in his place. Adam is an attorney. Do we have any comments or?
Who is he and what is he
You know,
specializing?
I think Adam would be it's an excellent choice there. He served with distinction on the Human Relations Commission and chaired it, and 6 years on the Zoning Commission and chaired that as well. He's, a young professional in the city. I think he's an excellent choice.
What's his expertise
I
in?
do need a second.
Second.
And what is his expertise in? I'm sorry. Adam Marshall?
He's an attorney.
I understand that, but.
Well, he's replacing
He's an
Stephen
attorney too,
Friedland,
but.
Friedland, who's an attorney as well, so.
I believe it's land use HOA type matters, I think.
Yeah,
My
so
understanding.
that doesn't align with GC Jack.
I
I mean, not for me.
I suspect he would competently serve, but I don't believe that's his expertise.
Yeah.
And I believe that was put through the executive committee. We do have
Did they-
a second. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Aye, opposed? So that passes
You
8
said
to
it
1.
passed, it went through the executive committee of
Yeah.
GC Jack?
Mhm.
Okay, and they approved it?
Yes.
Okay, well, that's fine then. You can change my vote. That's fine. If that's what they want, that's fine.
8.5 to 1/2.
Correct. Yeah, that'll work. Yeah. Yeah. Let's see.
Mrs. Abusawader?
No boards and commissions.
Mr. Outling?
None this evening, but I would like to publicly acknowledge and thank Professor Friedland. He has a terrific expertise in criminal law, made a lot of contributions to that body. They've produced a lot of terrific recommendations. So just want to express appreciation for him using his special expertise with that body.
Thank you. Mrs. Thurm?
I don't have any boards and commissions, but I too thank Steve a lot for serving. He's made a difference in our community.
He has. Mrs. Hightower?
I don't have anything.
Comments, Mrs. Hightower?
The only comment I do have is, I'm gonna go back to the discussion we had tonight on the contracting. I'd like to have a list of DOT contracts that have goals set on them, because I'd like to see exactly where they landed. I also want us to look at our goal setting parameters, because there aren't any. And I think on the goal setting committee, it is problematic because generally there are 3 and 4 people from one department voting on the contract. So that is another issue. So if you have someone from E&I and they have a contract they won't put through, well, there's 3 or 4 people there from that one department voting on that. And so I'd like to see the composition of the goal setting committee. And I'd also like Griffin and Strong to review that composition and tell us exactly how that should be administered. And then I'd like to have the minutes from the last goal setting committee that spoke about approving that contract, that DOT contract, because what I got was the minutes and they did not do that. So I have those minutes from August 9th. So I'd like to have the minutes from the approval of goal setting that approved that unanimously.
And are they on video? Are they recorded?
They are recorded.
Okay,
And-
so you
and
can go
we-
back
yeah.
and watch the
Yeah.
meeting to get the
I'm
real
not sure, are
flavor?
you talking, was this August 2020 or August? The project
Well,
that
it's-
was,
it-
that we looked at tonight?
It's when you said that it was a unanimous. So
That project, we can get that.
what meeting was that? Because the information that I received today from August 9th,
We
I'll
can
go
get a
back to my email, did not relay. That's when it gave me the 24 and the 13th.
We can get you a copy of the minutes. And
So-
we have cleaned it up where only one department, one person from each department gets to vote. So that's been corrected for about 7 or 8 months now.
Okay, because I haven't not heard that, because that was an issue. And so what changes are being implemented? Because apparently there are things being done that nobody knows about. So I'd like to know what changes have been implemented. If there has been a restructure of that goal setting committee and what that looks like as well.
Is that all, Mrs. Hightower?
Yeah, but I do want a list of those DOT contracts because I want to see the MWBEs. And I'm just very concerned that we're going to wind up having goals and combining goals. And one other question, when we set goals, don't we set goals based on capacity?
We set goals based on the number of firms that have been identified as ready, willing, and able to do certain scopes of work.
Okay, so we
not
just don't set goals willy-nilly, like come up with 10. So when we set goals, we set it based on capacity and availability to work.
Well,
So,
availability is something very, very different. We don't know what their availability
Well,
is
but they-
upfront, just like we don't know, the construction industry is absolutely crazy right now. So we know that there are these firms out there, but we don't know what their availability is.
but when you set the goal, you set the goal according to the names of the companies. You go by the companies that are able to do the work, have the capacity, and they generally are available depending on the time when the goal.
Do we check
when the
availability?
contract comes out.
We're gonna
But-
go through this in the,
I want to make sure that, because I have talked to some of these black small businessmen, and they have told me specifically. So I'm not talking in a vacuum.
no.
Well,
I'm
I
not
want to know,
saying
do
that.
we pre-check availability before we go out to bid?
We do not, we do not. We just set the goals based on the information that Griffin and Strong gave us of who's ready, willing, and available. And then when we put it out, people can bid or they cannot bid.
We solicit all those.
We
companies.
solicit all of them, yes.
What was the word available? What was that? What did that word mean?
Dr. Wells?
Wanted to thank the Racial Equity Institute, is that the name of the, for sponsoring movie night. Last Friday night, they did it at Peeler Center and also in High Point at one of their recreation centers. And the community people came out with their chairs and they offered food and drinks for everybody. So it was a nice night. And I thank them for doing that for the community. And they'll be doing it week after next too. So listen and watch for announcements when the next movie night will be coming forth. They saw the movie 13th.
Thank you. Mr. Outling?
Nothing further this evening. Thank you.
Mrs. Hoffman? Mrs. Thurm?
nothing for me. Thank you.
Mrs. Abuzawader?
Very quickly, National Folk Festival is still looking for volunteers. I know that I and some other council members have volunteered in the past. I'm planning to do Bucket Brigade again. It was a lot of fun. So please go online and sign up. It is September 10th, 11th, and 12th. Had the privilege of stopping by Camp Spark. That is the initiative by the Greensboro Fire Department to show young ladies all about firefighting. And I'm telling you, some of these young ladies would put, well, definitely me to shame, but they were really interested. They were doing just about everything a firefighter does, and they were very interested in the possibility of pursuing that as a career, several of them. So that was very good. And also to those who celebrate, this is Eid al-Adha, which is celebrated during the Holy Pilgrimage to Mecca. And there are many in our community celebrating today. So just want to keep them in mind. And that's all I have, Madam Mayor.
Thank you. Mrs. Johnson?
Saturday, I attended Miss Marion Logan's 100th birthday and represented all of you. I gave her your card. She was thrilled. And it was a lovely occasion, and just want to again say congratulations to her. She's been a fantastic human being in this community for many years. And I went to school with her daughter, one of her daughters. That's all I have.
Thank you. Ms. Kennedy?
Nothing tonight, thank you.
I'll just real quick, we are going to have a meeting at Barber Park, a town hall meeting from 3 to 5 on Monday, I believe, to talk about the Greensboro safety plan in regards to establishments that sell or you consume on-site alcohol. Staff and I have been working on what is a good plan moving forward. So that'll be at Barber Park Monday, 3 to 5. I also had the pleasure this morning of going to Cone to cut 3 ribbons on 3 mobile medical centers. And it's really important that they are going to go out into individual neighborhoods and do everything from mammographies to diagnostics to whatever it is you can do on site. And I think those are really important. I did want to pull up something really quick that we got today from Cone, and it really talks about the importance of us getting vaccinated. I can't pull it up right now, but I believe there are roughly about 23 people in the hospital. A few weeks ago, there were no people in the hospital. The people in the hospital now, the one thing they all have in common is that they're all unvaccinated, and that they are trending younger. They are 50 years old and younger. So I would encourage everyone, in order for us to keep this forward momentum that we have, and, in order to get our kids back to school, we need to make sure that, youth 12 and above, that they can get vaccinated, that teachers are getting vaccinated. So I think it's really, really important that we don't lose the momentum that we have. This Delta variant is strong. We don't know a lot about it. Just like the COVID-19, things change, but we need to take this seriously. And I hope that you'll encourage people to get vaccines. You can go on the NCDH website. You can actually put in what type of vaccine you want and in what zip code, and it will direct you and help make an appointment. So if you want Pfizer, Moderna, or if you just want the one-shot J&J, I would encourage people to do that. And I want to thank Cone for those mobile units. There has been one in Hayes Taylor for the last couple of weeks on Wednesdays, I believe, doing checkups. And so, look around, because they were really great to have out in the community, and they're all throughout Guilford County. And I think that's all I have. Mr. City Manager? No, Mr. City Attorney?
I have nothing.
Motion to adjourn?
Move we adjourn.
Moved by Ms. Kennedy, seconded by Dr. Wells. By affirmation?
Absolutely.
Yes? All right. Anyone want to stay? All right, we're adjourned.